I am not sorry for something I didn't do, and I am not sorry for the things I did do.
Mr. O'Neill, listen, stop, listen to me. You're not going to raise your voice again.
I'm not going to raise my voice again. I'm not.
I will have you removed from this courtroom. I consented you without you being present.
Yes, ma'am.
You don't conduct
I
yourself.
understand, Your Honor.
Thank you.
But I will say, I'm sorry for your loss.
Before I start this video, I want to thank everybody that like, comment, share, and subscribe. I see it. God see it. Blessings to you in your situations. Just in case you don't make it to the end of the video, I wanted to thank you now. Thank you. And I mean that. Warning. Trigger warning. This guy right here is a real demon. Demon in the flesh. Trigger warning. This video, it gets under my skin. I want to be locked in a room with this guy for just 10 minutes. Or should I just forgive him? Should I just forget about it? I remember the first time I seen this case, I was real angry. I wanted to chew on this guy's face. I'm just telling you the truth, man. When you hear this story, you might want to do the same. That's why I say trigger. But as I start learning about demons, I actually feel sorry for this guy. There's nothing I could do to this guy that the Most High isn't going to do to this guy. Check this out, but remember, this is a sad story right here.
On March 18th, 2018, the quiet suburban peace of Riverview, Florida was shattered forever. It was a Sunday night, the kind where most families are winding down for the work week. The neighbors are asleep. The air is warm. Everything feels normal. But inside a house on Baroness Avenue, a monster is waking up. This isn't a ghost story. This isn't a movie. This is the minute-by-minute account of a night that changed Florida forever. At 11:43 p.m., peace turned to chaos. A 911 dispatcher picked up a call. On the other end, there was no calm voice. There was only terror. You could hear a woman screaming for her life. Her name was Kenyatta Barron. She wasn't just calling for help. She was begging for mercy. "I'm so sorry, Ronnie," she cried. Those were some of her last words. Then the line captured a sound that no one should ever hear, the booming blast of a shotgun. The dispatcher tried to talk. They tried to get an address, but the screaming didn't stop. In the background, a man's voice rose above the chaos. It was deep. It was loud. It was full of a strange, rhythmic anger. He wasn't just mad. He sounded like he was performing a ritual.
It sounded like he was performing a ritual. Yeah, this is a demon right here.
"Allah Akbar," he shouted, over and over, while the woman he claimed to love was bleeding out on the floor. Before we go further into this night, I want to see who is standing with us today. Drop a comment below and let me know which city or country you are watching from. It helps our community grow and ensures these stories reach the people who need to hear them. If you appreciate the way we break down these stories, hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell. It's the best way to support the work we do here.
Yeah, I'm a subscriber right now.
Let's go back to that house. The police were already moving. Cars were racing toward the suburb. But they were too late for the first act of this tragedy. Inside the master bedroom, the floor was covered in wood and drywall from the shotgun blast. Kenyatta had been hit, but she was a mother. She had an instinct to survive. She didn't stay down. She managed to get up. She ran. She didn't run to the kitchen. She didn't run to the back door. She ran toward the front of the house, hoping to reach the street. She thought the light of the street lamps would save her. She thought the eyes of her neighbors would stop the man behind her. She was wrong. Ronnie O'Neill III was right on her heels. He wasn't finished. He didn't just want her dead. He wanted to destroy her. As Kenyatta reached the neighbor's porch, she collapsed. She was out of breath. She was losing blood. She started pounding on the door. Imagine being that neighbor. You are asleep. You hear a bang. You look out your window and see a woman covered in blood, pleading for her life. Before you can even reach for your phone, the shadow of a large man looms over her. The neighbor saw Ronnie standing there. He didn't have the shotgun anymore. He had something else. He had a weapon that felt like it belonged in a different century. He began to beat her, not with his fists, not with a club. He used the blunt force of his rage. The neighbor watched in horror as the attack continued. There was no hesitation.
No, hold on. This guy doesn't just turn into a werewolf all of a sudden. His woman seen signs, his children seen signs, but especially his woman. I'm telling you, there's people out here, you don't know where they came from. No, I'm serious. There's a guy out there. He's attractive. He say the right shit, and you don't even know that his father used to beat him every single day. He's seen his mother get unalived right in front of him when he was 7 years old, and you don't even know. You just like his dreads. You just like his eyes and his tattoos and shit. So you blinded. But I don't blame the women. They get blinded because men get blinded too. I was blinded before. You hear what I'm saying? This doesn't just happen. This guy didn't just wake up one morning, go throughout the day, and then at night, he do all of this crazy shit to his family. It was signs. And when you see those signs, you better get the hell away from these people.
There was no snapping. This was a hunt. But while Kenyatta was facing her end on that porch, something even more horrific was happening back inside the house. Ronnie had left 2 children behind. One was a 9-year-old girl named Ron Nevea. She had cerebral palsy. She couldn't walk. She couldn't speak. She was trapped in her bed. The other was an 8-year-old boy, Ronnie IV. He was hiding. He was watching. The 911 calls didn't stop with Kenyatta.
Now just think. One day, this little boy is going to be a man. And he might get body gains and get a good job. And the ladies are going to be looking, and he might not never tell the woman he's involved with this story. What story? The night that his father took out his mother, his sister, and tried to take him out. And then a woman will be involved with this guy, and something can just trigger. I'm not saying that he's going to grow up to be a bad guy. I'm just saying that we got to be careful who we laying down with. I'm telling you that right now.
A second call came in. This one was from Ronnie O'Neill himself. But he wasn't calling to surrender. He was calling to complain. He told the dispatcher that she had tried to kill him. He claimed he was the victim. He was setting the stage for a lie that he would tell for the next 3 years, even as his house began to glow with a strange orange light. He hadn't just used a gun and a blade. He had used fire. He poured gasoline in the master bedroom. He lit a match. He wanted to burn the evidence. He wanted to burn the memories. And most importantly, he wanted to burn the witnesses. He left his children in a house that was quickly becoming a furnace. The smoke was thick. The heat was melting the plastic on the walls. As the first police officers pulled onto the street, they didn't see a crime scene. They saw a bonfire. The house was screaming, not with voices, but with the sound of breaking glass and roaring flames. Ronnie O'Neill walked out of the front door. He didn't look scared. He didn't look like a man who just lost his family. He looked like he was winning. He walked toward the officers with his hands up, but he was still shouting. He was still preaching. The officers tackled him to the ground. They cuffed him, but as they looked past him at the burning structure, they saw a shadow moving in the smoke. A small, tiny shadow. It was a boy. He was walking slowly. He was covered in soot. His clothes were charred. He was holding his stomach. One of the officers ran toward him. As he got closer, he realized the boy wasn't just burnt. He had been cut open. This was the start of the Ronnie O'Neill case. A night of fire, a night of betrayal, and the beginning of a legal battle that would force a son to look his father in the eye and tell the world what really happened in the dark. The scene on Baroness Avenue was pure chaos. While Ronnie O'Neill was being pinned to the pavement, the house behind him was turning into a tomb. Firefighters arrived, but they weren't just fighting flames. They were looking for survivors. They knew 2 children were supposed to be inside. The smoke was so thick you couldn't see your own hand in front of your face. The heat was high enough to melt glass. But one survivor had already made it out, little Ronnie IV. He was only 8 years old. When the police reached him, they saw the true level of the horror. The boy had been stabbed multiple times. He had been doused in gasoline and set on fire. Yet, he was standing. He was talking. He told the officers, "My daddy killed my mommy." That single sentence destroyed the lies Ronnie O'Neill was already.
I wonder what would have happened if this little boy wouldn't have survived. This dude probably be on the street right now, laying in somebody else's bed.
Trying to tell. While paramedics rushed the boy to a helicopter, the fire crews finally pushed into the house. They had to be careful. The roof was ready to collapse. They moved through the living room and into the back hallway. That is where they found the first body. It was 9-year-old Ron Nevea. She was lying in her bed. Because of her cerebral palsy, she couldn't run. She couldn't fight back. She couldn't even scream for help the way her mother had. The autopsy would later show that she didn't die from the fire. She didn't die from the smoke. Her father had used a hatchet. The forensic team found that he had struck her multiple times with extreme force. It was a cold, calculated execution of a child who was completely helpless. Once the fire was out, the forensic investigators moved in.
Yeah. This dude is a serpent seed. How could you do a person like this, like that? This dude is a serpent seed, and it was always up in him. I say this again, you gotta be careful who you laying down with. You gotta ask a person who your mama is, where your daddy at. You got sisters and brothers? Where you grow up? You can't just look at a person and they handsome or fine and sexy, this baddie. This baddie probably survived her daddy. That's all I'm saying, man.
Job was to read the story the fire tried to hide. Fire is a great eraser of evidence, but it isn't perfect. They started in the master bedroom. This is where the 911 call began. They found the shotgun. It was a 12 gauge. There was one spent shell in the chamber and more scattered on the floor. The investigators looked at the walls. They found lead splash and pellet holes. This told them exactly where Kenyatta was standing when the first shot was fired. She had been hit in the arm. It was a devastating wound, but it didn't stop her. The blood trail started there. It was a thick, smeared line that led out of the bedroom, through the kitchen, and out the front door. Forensics isn't just about what you find. It's about the how. The blood on the floor was in drop patterns at first. This meant she was moving fast, but as the trail hit the front porch, the pattern changed. There were swiping marks. This told the team that she was falling. She was struggling to stay upright. Then they moved to the neighbor's porch across the street. This is where the story gets even darker. They found a heavy amount of blood on the concrete. They also found something else, a bloody footprint. It didn't belong to Kenyatta. It belonged to a large man's sneaker. It matched the shoes Ronnie O'Neill was wearing when he was arrested. This footprint proved he didn't just stay at his house. He followed her. He hunted her down on a...
Damn, that's how he looked the night he was arrested? Yeah, this dude is a demon.
...stranger's doorstep. Back inside the house, the arson investigators found 5 different points of origin. This is a technical term for where a fire starts. Most accidental fires start in one place, like a stove or a bad wire. But O'Neill's house had 5. He had poured accelerant in the bedroom, the hallway, and near the kids' rooms. He wanted the whole place to go up at once. He wanted to make sure no one could get out alive. The team also found the hatchet. It was discarded in the debris. It was covered in blood and soot. When they tested the DNA, it confirmed their worst fears. It had the DNA of both Ron Nevaeh and little Ronnie IV. This was the smoking gun of the physical evidence. It proved that O'Neill didn't just use a gun in a moment of heat.
Who do he look like right there? A little bit. Tell me he don't look like Rashad Jamal, little brother. Now, I'm not saying that he had anything to do with Rashad Jamal. I'm just saying that the guy looked like Rashad Jamal, little brother, man. They kind of favor each other a little bit.
He switched weapons. He used a tool meant for chopping wood to attack his own children. As the sun began to rise over Riverview, the investigators were exhausted. They had bags of evidence. They had photos of a charred nightmare. But they had one major problem. Ronnie O'Neill was at the police station, and he wasn't acting like a guilty man. He was acting like a preacher. He was telling the detectives that he was a man of God. He said,
religious narcissist. I'm telling you, the religious narcissist, that's a demon right there. I don't know why these demons, they feel like they preachers. It be people on the train. They don't know how to do anything else but to preach, and they are crazy as hell. There's a demon out there that'll take you out and quote scripture at the same time. And this is one of them. I bet you he was doing that inside of his home before the murders, man. His woman seen the signs. But them serpent seeds, they got that good loving. You hear what I'm saying? They know exactly what to say. They hypnotize your ass like a snake. This is a serpent seed right here. And I want to kick his ass. You hear what I'm saying? I want to kick his ass.
He was protecting his kids from a demon mother. He didn't know that his son was still alive. He didn't know that the boy he tried to burn was currently in a hospital bed, telling the truth to a detective. O'Neill thought he had burned the witnesses. He thought the fire had eaten the evidence. He was wrong. The house was in ruins, but the truth was still standing. The detective sat across from O'Neill in the interview room. They let him talk. They let him lie. They recorded every word. Every time he said he loved his kids, they thought about the hatchet. Every time he said he was the victim, they thought about the 911 tape. They were building a cage of evidence, and O'Neill was walking right into it. While the police were busy sifting through the charcoal and ash of Baroness Avenue, a different kind of battle was happening at the Tampa General Hospital. Ronnie IV was fighting for his life. He was only 8 years old, but he was carrying injuries that would have killed most grown men. He had deep stab wounds in his abdomen. His skin was covered in second and third-degree burns. He was wrapped in bandages from head to toe. The doctors worked around the clock, but the police knew they couldn't wait forever. They needed to know what happened before Ronnie O'Neill could come up with a better story. They sent a special investigator to the hospital. Her name was Detective Mike Blair. He didn't know it yet, but this little boy was about to change his life forever. When the detective walked into the room, he saw a child who looked like he had been through a war. But the boy was awake. He was brave. He looked at the detective and started to talk. He didn't cry. He didn't hide. He told the story of that night in simple, heartbreaking words. He told the detective how his father had come into the room, how he had hurt his sister, how he had hurt him. He described the black stuff his father poured on the floor. He described the smell of the gasoline. He told the detective that his father told him to come into the fire. "Come into the fire, son," O'Neill had said. It was a detail so cold it made the veteran investigator's blood run cold. This wasn't just a murder. This was a man trying to take his entire legacy into the grave with him. Before we get into the details of the recovery, I want to hear from you. Have you ever heard of a survivor as brave as Ronnie the Fourth?
No.
Let me know your thoughts in the comments. While Ronnie the Fourth was healing, the legal system was moving. Ronnie O'Neill III was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, 1 count of attempted murder, and arson. Usually, in a case like this, a lawyer would step in and try to make a deal. They would look for a way to avoid the death penalty. But Ronnie O'Neill wasn't like other defendants. He didn't want a lawyer. He claimed he was a Moorish citizen. He used strange legal words that didn't make sense. He told the judge that he was his own lawyer. He said that no one could tell his story better than he could. The judge warned him. The judge told him
so he's a Moor. This is why I pray before I get on YouTube. This is why I pray before I start watching all of these videos, man. You hear what I'm saying? A lot of these videos have spirits up in them. And you invite these spirits into your home. Like I said, I know his woman seen the signs. And she probably was going to break up with his ass. And that's why he snapped. I feel like fighting this dude so bad.
He was facing the ultimate penalty. O'Neill didn't care. He was confident. He was arrogant. He believed he could win. This created a nightmare for the prosecution. If O'Neill was his own lawyer, it meant he had the right to look at all the evidence. It meant he could see the photos of his daughter's body. It meant he could read the hospital reports of his son. And worst of all, it meant he would have the right to cross-examine the witnesses, including his own son. The legal team spent months preparing. They knew this wouldn't be a normal trial. They watched O'Neill in his pre-trial hearings. He would scream. He would cite laws that didn't exist. He would call the judge ma'am, even though he was a man. He was trying to turn the courtroom into a circus. He wanted to confuse the jury. He wanted them to think he was crazy, but also that he was a victim of a conspiracy. Back at the hospital, Ronnie IV was doing the impossible. He was walking. He was eating. He was smiling. The nurses called him a superhero. But he had no home to go back to. His mother was gone. His sister was gone. His father was the person who put him there. That is when Detective Mike Blair did something incredible. He and his wife decided to foster Ronnie IV. They brought the boy who had survived the fire into their own home. They gave him a safe place to sleep for the first time since that Sunday night in March. But the safe feeling wouldn't last forever. The trial date was set for June 2021. It had been 3 years since the night of the fire. Ronnie IV was now 11 years old. He was no longer a small child. He was a young man. And he knew that to get justice for his mother and sister, he had to go into a room and face the man who tried to kill him. The prosecution was worried. Could an 11-year-old stand up to a father who was screaming in a courtroom? Could he remember the details under the pressure of the bright lights and the jury's eyes? They spent hours talking to him. They didn't tell him what to say. They just told him to tell the truth. Meanwhile, O'Neill was in his jail cell, writing his opening statements. He wasn't looking at the forensic evidence. He wasn't looking at the DNA on the hatchet. He was looking at the camera. He knew the trial would be televised. He knew the whole world would be watching. He saw it as his big break. He saw it as a stage. The world was about to see one of the most shocking displays in legal history. A man charged with double murder, representing himself, standing in front of a jury and claiming that he was the only one telling the truth. The stage was set. The witnesses were ready. The forensic evidence was bagged and tagged. But no one was prepared for what happened when the doors to the courtroom finally opened. No one was ready for the sound of Ronnie O'Neill's voice. as he addressed the jury for the first time. It wasn't the voice of a grieving father. It was the roar of a man who believed he was a god. The atmosphere in the courtroom was thick. This wasn't just a trial, it was a showdown. Usually, a defense attorney spends their time whispering to their client and looking at notes. But Ronnie O'Neill sat alone at the defense table. He had stacks of paper in front of him. He looked like a man who had been waiting for this moment his entire life. He didn't look like a man facing the death penalty. He looked like a lead actor on opening night. When the judge called the court to order, the world got its first taste of the O'Neill method. He stood up. He didn't speak in a normal tone. He didn't address the jury with respect. He began to scream. "The evidence is going to show," he yelled, his voice echoing off the walls, "that I am a victim of some of the most cruelest, vicious, and meanest people." He pointed his finger at the prosecution. He pounded on the podium. He told the jury that the police had lied. He told them the paramedics had lied. He even hinted that the evidence against him had been planted by a corrupt system.
You ever noticed how white demons blame it on black people and black demons always blame it on white people?
That wanted to see him fail. It was a performance that left the jury stunned. Some looked confused, others looked frightened. O'Neill wasn't following the rules of evidence, he was preaching. He claimed that on the night of the fire, Kenyatta had been the one who attacked the children. He said he was a hero who had to step in to stop her. It was a bold lie, especially considering the 911 tape where Kenyatta was heard begging for her life. But O'Neill didn't care about the tape. He cared about the narrative. Once the opening statements were over, the prosecution began to lay out the forensic hook. They didn't use loud voices. They used facts. They brought in the medical examiners. They showed the jury photos of the shotgun wounds. They showed the hatchet marks on 9-year-old Ron Nevaeh. Every time a gruesome photo appeared on the screen, O'Neill would stand up and object. He claimed the photos were prejudicial. He didn't want the jury to see the reality of what he had done. He wanted them to focus on his shouting. But then came the moment everyone had been waiting for, the moment the internet would never forget. The prosecution called their star witness, Ronnie IV. The boy was now 11. He walked into the courtroom wearing a small suit. He looked tiny in the witness stand. The room went silent. You could hear a pin drop. On one side of the room was a boy who had been stabbed, burned, and left for dead. On the other side was the man who had done it, his own father. Under the law, because O'Neill was his own lawyer, he had the right to cross-examine the witness. This meant he was allowed to talk directly to his son. It was one of the most uncomfortable moments in the history of the Florida court system. O'Neill stood up and walked toward his son. He didn't look like a loving father. He looked like a predator. He began to ask the boy questions about that night. He tried to trip him up. He tried to make the boy say that his mother had been the one with the knife. "Did I hurt you that night?" O'Neill asked, his voice suddenly dropping to a low, manipulative tone. The boy didn't blink. He didn't look away. He looked his father right in the eye. "Yes," the boy said. "You stabbed me."
It's good to see you, man. Good to see you too. Did I hurt you that night of this?
His son said, "It's good to see you too." See, that's the thing about children, man. You could do them wrong and they'll forgive you overnight, man. That's why I don't understand how a person can do this shit. Oh yeah, I could understand. This is a demon right here. A real demon in the flesh.
Incident?
Yes.
I did. And how did I hurt you?
He stabbed me.
O'Neill didn't stop. He
How
pushed.
did I hurt you, motherfucker? You stabbed me. You killed my sister and my mama. This dude is such a demon. He want to cross-examine his own son instead of just saying, you know what? I done did it. You know what? I don't even want to put him through this. I pull out every piece of his hair. But get used to it because we're about to see more of this. We're about to see more of this. And I'm going to say this again. If you ever see signs of this shit in your partner, don't play around. Get away. Get away, man.
Harder. Did you see me stab you? He asked, trying to use a legal loophole about what the boy actually saw in the dark, smoky house. I saw you with the knife, Ronnie IV replied. He was calm. He was steady. He was stronger than the man screaming at the podium.
Right.
The cross-examination went on for what felt like hours. O'Neill tried to act like they were just having a talk. He called the boy's son. He tried to act like they were on the same team. But the boy wouldn't budge. He stuck to the forensic truth. He told the jury how his father had poured the gasoline. He told them how his father had told him to come into the fire. By the time Ronnie IV stepped down from the stand, the energy in the room had shifted. The circus was over. The shouting didn't matter anymore. The jury had seen the miracle survivor face the monster, and the monster had lost. O'Neill tried to keep up the act, but the cracks were starting to show. He was losing his grip on the room. The prosecution finished their case by playing the 911 calls one last time. They wanted the screams of Kenyatta Barron to be the last thing the jury remembered. They wanted the sound of the shotgun blast to drown out Ronnie O'Neill's voice. As the trial moved toward the closing arguments, the forensic evidence was undeniable. The DNA was there, the footprints were there, the survivor was there. Ronnie O'Neill had spent weeks trying to build a wall of lies, but the truth was closing in. He had one last chance to speak to the jury, one last chance to save his life, and he wasn't going to go out quietly. The trial had reached its breaking point. For weeks, the courtroom had felt more like a theater than a place of law. Ronnie O'Neill III had screamed. He had pointed fingers, and he had tried to rewrite the history of a night that was already written in blood. But now the talking was almost over. It was time for the closing arguments. O'Neill stood before the jury one last time. He didn't use this moment to show remorse. He didn't cry for his daughter. He didn't apologize to his son. Instead, he doubled down on his defiance. He told the jury that the prosecution's case was a fable. He looked them in the eye and said, "I am not a murderer. I am a father who was pushed to the edge." He was still trying to sell the lie that Kenyatta Barron had been the aggressor. He was still trying to play the victim. But the prosecution was ready. They didn't need to shout. They just pointed to the table where the evidence sat. They pointed to the hatchet. They pointed to the charred remains of the shotgun. They reminded the jury of the 911 calls. They played the sound of Kenyatta's voice, a voice that was silenced by the very man standing in front of them. The prosecutor looked at the jury and said, "The evidence doesn't lie. People do." The jury left the room to deliberate. Usually, in a double murder case with this much evidence, the wait can take days. But in the Ronnie O'Neill case, the truth was too loud to ignore. After only 4 hours, the bell rang. They had a verdict. Ronnie O'Neill stood as the clerk read the words, "Guilty, guilty, guilty," on every single count. The jury didn't buy the act. They saw through the shouting and the strange legal theories. They saw a man who had hunted a woman onto a porch and slaughtered a child in her bed. O'Neill didn't flinch. He didn't bow his head. He looked like he was still waiting for a round of applause that was never going to come. But the most powerful moment of the entire legal saga happened during the sentencing. The judge, Michelle Cisco, had seen a lot in her career. She had seen the worst of humanity. But even she was shaken by this case. She looked at Ronnie O'Neill and told him that in all her years on the bench, she had never seen a case as cruel and vicious as this one.
Look, she shouldn't have said that because that's what the demons like. I just want to bust him in his face. These type of guys, they don't know how to fight. They don't know how to fight. That's why they do shit like this. He's going to be on protective custody for the rest of his life, 23 hours locked down. They gonna spit in his food. He can't be in general pop. and he's going to think about this shit, because what's going to happen is this murder case, that night, it's going to be on repeat. This is the only thing he's going to think about right now. If he's alive right now, he's replaying that night right now. He can't think of shit else.
She sentenced him to 3 life terms, plus 90 years, ensuring he would never breathe free air again. But the story of Ronnie O'Neal isn't the one we should remember. The real story belongs to the victims. Kenyatta Barron was a mother who spent her final seconds on Earth trying to save her family. Her 911 call wasn't just a cry for help. It was an act of bravery. Even while she was wounded, she was trying to get the police to that house to save her children. We honor her memory as a woman who loved fiercely until her very last breath. And then there is Ron Nevaeh, a 9-year-old girl who deserved a life of care and protection. She couldn't speak for herself in life, but the forensic evidence spoke for her in death. Her story reminds us that the most vulnerable among us deserve the strongest shield. Finally, there is the miracle, Ronnie IV, the boy who walked out of the fire. The lesson we learned from Ronnie IV is about the incredible strength of the human spirit. He didn't just survive a fire. He survived the ultimate betrayal. He had every reason to be broken. He had every reason to give up. Instead, he stood in a courtroom and spoke the truth. He showed more courage at 11 years old than his father showed in a lifetime. There is a beautiful ending to this nightmare. Detective Mike Blair, the man who found Ronnie IV in the smoke that night, didn't just walk away when the case was closed. He and his wife officially adopted Ronnie IV. They gave him a new name and a new life. They showed him that while there is monsters in the world, there are also heroes who will run into the fire to bring you out. This case teaches us a hard lesson. It tells us that evil can hide behind the faces of those we are supposed to trust. It reminds us to listen to the instincts, to watch for the warning signs of rage and control, and to never take our safety for granted. But it also tells us that justice, even when it takes years, has a way of finding the light. The ashes of Baroness Avenue are gone now. The house is no longer there, but the truth of what happened remains. We tell these stories not just for the shock, but to make sure these names are never forgotten. If you found this deep dive into the Ronnie O'Neal case important, please share this video. It helps us keep the memory of victims like Kenyatta and Ron Nevaeh alive. If you haven't yet, subscribe to the channel and join our community. This is more than just a true crime channel. I am dedicated to the truth and justice and the lessons that come with it. Thank you for watching and stay safe out there. I will see you in the next one.